Da-da-da! Good chair. Welcome, everybody. Let's see if this works out a little bit better tonight. It has been an experiment for me, seriously. And in that little bit of keeping myself neutral in my emotions, it's important for me to have that sense of accomplishment. That's what makes me feel good, that sense of accomplishment. And you know, when my other parts of me feel that frustration in me when things are not working out the way that I want, or I have that worry in my system that, the good things just seem to be a little bit more difficult, a little bit more minimal in it. Up this morning and I was right up to bed last night again, a little bit disappointed that my microphone was not working for me, that sound and that static in my lives, right? It is frustrating, but I also understand that the good things in my life come from accomplishment. It comes from me feeling good. It comes from me in being happy and comfortable, right? Not in having that stress in my life, having that frustration in my life, always struggling and crawling over hurdles, heartbreak, scariness. You know, like I said, those amazing things that we all want to come into our lives, those things that, those are our dreams, those are our goals, those are our ambitions. Sometimes it's just having that calmness in our systems. That's what we appreciate, because for the norm, it is all scary and frustrating and heartbreaking and full of grief, maybe in our ailments and in our illnesses. It's that physicality we were talking about yesterday that I didn't mention, right? That we're hurting. I am grateful for my good health. I wouldn't be able to concentrate on what's most important, right? In that neutralness. I'm calling it neutralness because we all have dark in our system. We all do. And if you say you don't, well, you can't say you're Mother Teresa, because even Mother Teresa, she didn't really go into detail with what she was struggling with, but she let it be known that there were problems and there were scaries and there was demons that she was battling. But it's not the idea that we should be battling these demons, because they're not demons. They're just those frustrations and heartbreak and grief and illness that some of us just constantly are struggling with. And when we don't see the good come into our lives, it just makes us more frustrated. Hello, Eugene. I'm doing really good tonight. We'll get into that as we move into this conversation, because I think this will be helpful for some people, maybe more helpful for the people who struggle more than I do in the darkness. And it's not that I don't struggle, right? If you knew, that I am not achieving my goals and my dreams and my ambitions, right? That I would be frustrated, that I would be heartbroken, I would be disillusioned in my life. But picking up a few lessons, not just in the most recent years, But in all my life and growing up in that dynamic family where there was the two extremes, right? Both struggling, both having light in their system, both having dark in their system, but in the extremes that one had more dark in it and one had more light in it. So, you know, there is that resentment and maybe jealousy and, why are their life working out so well and my life is just going. It's because you're not finding the joy. You're not finding what works for you, what makes you happy, right? Like I said, when I first came into my life tonight, that sense of accomplishment that brings so much joy, that makes me feel that life is worth living, right? And I've always felt like life was worth living, right? I've always taken my piece of the pie, not at somebody else's expense, because when you're putting that on somebody else, that's just as bad as jealousy and resentment. One of the first things that I woke up to, and I woke up to a lot of stuff instantly, but one of those very first things that I learned is that I give energy. I don't take energy. And that's so hard, isn't it? You know, and I even did that knowing that one thing. I continued to do it for probably, oh my goodness, it was a couple of years. My life was falling apart, like literally falling apart. I couldn't hold on to jobs anymore. I couldn't pay my bills. COVID hit and I was losing my apartment. I was struggling so bad. Thank goodness I happened on to mindset. It was like lifelines being dropped down to me. And you know what it is when your life is falling apart, when we have struggles and pain and grief and frustration. We are looking for anything, any lifeline that is coming down to us to cling on to for dear life, to in that hopes that it will pull us out of a really bad situation. And I continued to do that, even knowing I had just started dipping my toes into the lessons. I always knew that that sense of accomplishment made me feel good. But when your life is falling apart like that, you don't feel a sense of accomplishment. It's hard to smile. It's hard to believe that things will get better because you just feel that you're just falling into a pit of nothingness. And when those lifelines drop, you're grabbing at them because you grab at anything not to go into the pit. So, in that reference to my sister, I had a sister who was pretty well to do. She was the matriarch in the family, and she would not let any of us fall into that pit if she could help it. Right? And she was bailing me out. She was well to do financially, right? And she loved being the queen bee and the rescuer, right? But in those lifelines, I knew I was pulling her down. I wasn't taking care of my own problems, right? I was letting her take care of my problems. And there was no pride in that, right? And I was in the mindset already. And not being able to accomplish for myself, right? It made me just go deeper into that pit, and everything that I was dealing with just wanted to keep me there. That's what it felt like. It just wanted to keep me there. All I had was the lessons, all I had was the mindset. And, you know, in one of those lessons about getting away from the negativity, I had to, because my sister was getting frustrated and angry. And she had her own health issues because the moment I was crashing, she was crashing too. I had mindset to cling to. That was some of those lifelines. But my sister, right? She didn't swing that way. She had no tools in that. So not only was she dealing with her health, she was dealing with her narcissistic husband. She was dealing with her own life falling apart. And I just became another anchor on her. And, right, being that empath and not having the tools at that moment, those tools, I had lots of tools, but not those tools about, standing on my own 2 feet, in getting away from the negative, because I wasn't just negative, right? My sister had become negative, and she was surviving on the negativity because I'm coming from that dynamic family of the two extremes, right? As much as I'm the empath, my sister, she swung. We're going to say controlling, but narcissism runs in my family. It really does, right? And she married a narcissist, and they were devouring each other. And when things got really bad, right, that devouring came my way. And then that's when it hit me, right? That first understanding that I woke up to. And like I said, I woke up to a lot of things instantly, but that was one of them. I don't give energy, I give energy. And so I was overcompensating, for all the kindnesses she was doing for me. I was exhausting myself in trying to repay them in my own little drummer girl way, because I didn't have the funds. I wasn't well to do, but I could clean, I could garden, I can take on the beatings, the emotional and the frustration that she was dealing with, and try to alleviate that the best that I could. And I did that for another year until finally that lesson came to me. It said, you can't just be around that negative. You just can't be. But that's my family, right? Right? And yes, maybe I've always been an optimist, right? I've always been that way. And I thought I could take it. I thought I could be the tough one, right? Right? But the thing is, I didn't understand that those other parts of me communicated and felt so much, the emotions. So the more frustrated she got with me, the more frustrated she got with her pain and her frustrations and the narcissist that she was married to and all those problems there, and her job, right? She didn't get well to do by just saying, I want to be well to do. She worked hard and she had a great position and a great job. And she was struggling in that, in the right COVID and business crashing. Like, it was a mess. It was a mess for all of us. And in that disaster, I finally realized I can't do it anymore. It doesn't matter that we're in the midst of COVID and we're getting locked down. It doesn't matter that I can't keep a job. I can't even find a job. That I don't even want a job. I just don't want to be working for these people that have always devoured me. and made me insignificant when I knew I wasn't, because, in my sense of feeling of accomplishment, I overcompensated even in my jobs, and not to get the recognition that was deserved 100%, but not even recognized. Like, it wasn't even recognized, and I just didn't want to work for these people anymore, right? And it was a terrible, terrible situation. Now we're going back into the beginning of that. It was like 2020 when all of that started happening. But finally, that lesson got to me, like, oh my goodness, you can't be around the negative, Cindy. You just can't be around that. But then the guilt and the shame. And so I delved into the lessons, and took a lot of Wayne Dryer for that one. Thank goodness for that gentleman who helped me with that, right? Helped me to understand jealousy and resentment, because my health was good, hers wasn't. And, right? And I understand that. But it took me a while to understand that I can't be around that, family or not. That is not good for those other parts of me. Nothing good can come into my life, right? With that negative there, right? And it's not a matter of getting rid of her. It's just a matter of getting away from the negative, right? To get away from that emotional beating that those other parts of me, right, just cannot manage, right? That just cannot surface in any way. So I had to start taking care of myself. Oh my goodness. And that was tough, right? To go through work programs, to get on, oh my goodness, I was on social assistance, and that was degrading. But anything, so I did not have to rely, right? That I didn't feel beholden or felt that guilt and shame because I was taking from anybody. The only way I could do that was stand on my 2 feet. And stand on my 2 feet, I did. It took a couple of years. And in those couple of years, magnificent miracles came into my life. I quit gambling, you guys, right? I quit gambling, and that was a miracle in itself, because I was addicted to gambling for over 20 years by that point. It destroyed my marriage. And in that accomplishment, oh, I felt good. And going through a work program and getting a job, and not only just a job, but a job that I absolutely loved, a job that I could shine in, right? And be recognized in, and actually work with a manager who appreciated me and recognized my contribution, right? And she was a narcissist, but we held on to values, and we worked with each other like such a team, two opposites of the spectrum. She never brought her problems to work. Oh my goodness, the love of her life passed away, and I didn't even know till 6 months later, because she just kept it to herself and to her few close friends. And by then, we were close friends, right? That she suffered in on her own when I could have helped her in that. I think I could have by then helped her a little bit in that, even in being the cheery. But sometimes, right, in just getting the job done, when somebody, your boss or your coworkers, are really low in their life, sometimes just being neutral and not being the absolute positive in stuff, because people do struggle with jealousy and resentment. Why are they so happy, and why am I, right? And then they just want to bring you down to their level. And maybe it's not with intent to bring you down, it's just the struggle and the pain of just being faced with that says, oh my goodness, I can't deal with one more smile. I can't deal with one more laugh. I don't want to deal with one magnificent miracle that comes into somebody else's life and not into my own life, right? And so I'm losing track in that. So let's just get back into that, right? Slowly, my life got better. And that pride in myself that I was doing it, that I was actually taking my lessons serious. Thank goodness I said that right? Because I'm not a religious person. I could have gone a real religious way. And even though I'm moving towards understandings, right? I have to do that in baby steps. I have to do it in bits and bytes because of my own experiences in my own life that I have to better understand myself in order to better understand those other parts of me. But I knew that those other parts of me were only surfacing because I was feeling better, because I was smiling, because I was positive and I was feeling appreciated and I was being recognized, not just by my boss, but by my coworkers and by my customers. Not only that, I was losing weight. I was filling up my closet with beautiful clothes, right? I worked in a little thrift store, cheap, cheap, cheap. I became a little bit compulsive in nice on brand clothing. And I loved my job. Oh my goodness, did I love my job, right? But things never stay the same forever. Sometimes it's in my choices, sometimes it's in somebody else's choice. And I lost that amazing manager that I had, right? New manager came on board. But being the cheery, right? Being that person that I was exactly like I was doing with my sister and overcompensating, right? Show somebody what a great employee you are, how they can rely on you, how you can run the show and they can do what they need to do and not worry that things were going to fall apart, but then not getting the recognition and the appreciation. And then, right, things not going well for them, that they're in the negative, and then passing the blade, and then the jealousy and the resentment. Again, everybody has light and everybody has darkness, but to what extreme? Some people go through stages of being in the dark, like I was, in looking for those lifelines when COVID hit, right? But we have to move out of that. And in the lessons, in the mindset lessons, I come to understand that I could just be neutral in that. I could be, I hate to say the word indifferent, but that's what it felt like, right? That I didn't have happy moments and I didn't have sad moments. And the past couple of years that I was working in that job that put the roof over my head, I just kind of relied on that. But it didn't feel good. It didn't feel like the job that I had taken on and that I had grown into and that we had created for the company that I worked for. It had all changed. It had all changed. And I couldn't be in the negative because I knew that answer, but I needed that roof over my head. And so I stayed a year longer than I should have. Just like I stayed a year, I was the last one to leave my sister and that marriage that she was in because it was unbearable for my entire family. It was just awful, right? But that was my sister and she had helped me out so much and I stuck around that. And those other parts of me took that beating, and then because my other parts took that beating, I took that beating because those other parts of me were not coming to the surface. They were off doing their own thing, whatever. They were present 100%. And I felt my life coming down again. I have to say, the best thing that I did for myself this year was quit that job that put the roof over my head. And if you had asked me at the time, oh my goodness, right? I was so scared how I was going to keep the roof over my head. I haven't worked in 5 months, right? I got the roof over my head. The bills are paid, right? I'm going on holidays in a couple of weeks, right? But those frustrations are still coming in. I'm having laptop issues and microphone issues, and I have no idea how I'm going to make this trip happen, but I have not missed my sabbatical, September sabbatical in 20 years, a couple of decades, and my sister is sick and she's going in for heart bypasses. And I was at the hospital the day and I was the only one there. And I was so frustrated because, right, nobody else was there and I couldn't get answers. I didn't know how the operation was going. I was just praying that a surgeon or somebody was going to come in when it was all over and say she got through it good, right? And then finally somebody came in, and in that relief of knowing that she made it through the operation, right? I had that sense of accomplishment. I was there. I stayed there the whole day. But that relief that it was over and she had made it through. Excuse me. That she had made it through. I burst into tears. It was such a relief, and it was all pent up in me because I've been in this lessons. I have been in mindset for so long. I knew that I had to stay neutral. I had been so neutral for so long, even in quitting my job. I was just like, oh, we'll just live day to day. Everything will work out okay. And everything did work out okay. Like everything did. So I knew the lessons were working in that, right? That my life was kind of messed up, but everything was okay and I was feeling okay. I mean, I've been here every single night, but then I see the problems start to happen. And I woke up this morning, you guys, remembering that experience that I had in that waiting room in the hospital, waiting for my sister's operation, that she could have easily died, right? Thank goodness she didn't die in that. And that relief that I had in bursting out crying, right? But that crying was a sense of relief. It was a sense of release. And I remembered, right, today that I said, oh my goodness, those other parts of me surfaced when I bawled my eyes out, when I cried, right? When I had that sense of release, that sense of relief. So I thought, oh my goodness, it's okay that we have these emotions. It's just a matter of being neutral in that, not laying them in somebody else's lap, not taking our frustrations out on others, not allowing the guilt and the shame and the jealousy and the resentment to affect us and to affect others. So I woke up this morning. I went halfway through my podcast last night. It says I can't even watch my own podcast, and I watch all my podcasts for the lessons because I get as much out of my lessons as anybody does. But I got halfway through my podcast. I says I can't do this anymore. I don't know what's wrong with my laptop. I don't know what's wrong with my microphone. I don't know what I could do to make it better without sacrificing my trip. And then I said, oh my goodness, Cindy, that's kind of negative, isn't it? That's not really neutral, is it? We are going to move and we're going to try and figure out the computer today, because if you can figure out the laptop, that will give you that sense of accomplishment. That'll make you feel better, right? And we worked towards our trip. I was a little bit stressed, a little bit worried because this trip depends on me selling a few of my things that I've listed on Facebook so that I have spending money for coffees and and crystals and treats, whatever I want, so I can have a beautiful holiday. I mean, right? I would still have a beautiful holiday. I had the bare minimum, but I want to have a magnificent holiday. And I can't even buy a new computer. I'm looking at cameras. I can't even afford to buy a camera. And I'm thinking, you can't be frustrated in this, Cindy. You can't be, because that's not going to serve you. That's not going to serve getting yourself on that holiday. It's not going to help you solve the problems at all. And those other parts of you are not going to surface. You know that, Cindy. They're not going to surface because they don't like those negative feelings, right? Just like when you swing hard to the negative, that those positive feelings are frustrating because you have to take a look at yourself. You have to deal with the guilt and shame. You have to deal with, well, why is everything wonderful for them and so terrible for me? Why are they so healthy and I have aches and pains and surgeries and illnesses, right? But that's because of the negative, right? Light and the darkness and the light, they're the exact same thing, but they're dealing with them differently, right? And it's those baseline of values that we're going to be able to better move with each other. And if we can better move with each other, we can better communicate these things so that, the dark has some answers and the light has some answers. That we're just not partnering with ourselves, that possibly we can partner with the opposite, the extreme of us. So this morning I got up. One of the problems with my laptop is I had the modem cord stuck in my laptop. It was just stuck there. I couldn't get it out. It's like a little phone plug. You got to push it and pull it out. And I says, okay, I got to get this cord off. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take it to a computer shop, and that's going to cost me money. And if I yank on it, it's going to destroy it. So what do? I go to AI learning and I Google the problem. And within a few minutes, I had the answer. And a few minutes later, after about 4 months, I had that cord out of my laptop. I didn't destroy the laptop. I said, perfect. I said, get this microphone out of my laptop. So I yanked the microphone out. It's now my prop again. It's not in my laptop, right? And on top of that, I said, okay, let's go into the settings and see if I got some settings not set up properly, right? So what do? I go into my settings and oh my goodness, right? It's on Wi-Fi. Why is this on Wi-Fi? It's not supposed to be on Wi-Fi. It's supposed to be on the cord because I put a fresh cord in there. Took the old one out. It was for something else probably. It wasn't for laptops. And I went into my electrical bag. I pulled out a new cord. I put the cord in and it wasn't working. And I go, okay, Cindy, calm down. That worked by asking AI to help. Do it again. So I let AI, Google, know what the problem was. And word for word, they told me what to do. And I went into my settings and I turned off the Wi-Fi and I turned on the connection to the modem, and bang, I'm up and running again. Now, I won't know until I come back tonight, or I'll probably come back tonight and watch my live again, right? Whether or not that worked. Because I know if you use the cord, right? Wi-Fi is not dependable. And I've been using Wi-Fi for like 4 months without even realizing that. And I'm really hoping that was the problem. I won't know until I come back in. But I am going to have such a sense of accomplishment if that did the trick. Okay, so that was one thing. So I was feeling so proud of myself. So I says, oh, good, Cindy, I'm just going to do house projects and clean the house up. And then we're going to start packing clothes and getting ready for camping because, right, you move towards what you want. You move towards those goals. You move towards those dreams, right? That's how it gets, that's how it happens, right? And because I was feeling so good about figuring out the chord and asking, right, Google to help me out, and it worked out perfectly as far as I know. Like I said, I won't know until I come back and watch my live because I was so disappointed in the sound and in the visual that it was making me negative, right? It was making me, oh my goodness, I need a camera. I need a new laptop. I can't get the cord out. I'm going to destroy my computer. But I had to do something. I had to try, right? And in trying, right, I got a little bit of help. And being in neutral in that, in following my lessons, right, and being neutral in my emotions, those other parts of me surfaced. And hopefully it worked out. So my house was all clean. I was all ready to get into the camping, right? Oh my goodness, I'm having such a great day. I really hope that my laptop works. But at the very least, I was excited and happy and pleased that I didn't destroy my laptop in getting that old cord out of it. And I did that. And I was kind of proud of myself. I had a sense of accomplishment. That was enough. Next thing I know, I get a message. I'd like to buy your sewing machine. Just like, are you kidding me? She goes, I'll be there at 2 o'clock. I have people who phone me, so oh, okay, I'll be there. But right, and then I stay home instead of going out for walks or doing other things. And then nobody calls, nobody messages, nobody shows up. And then that's a sense of frustration in that. 1:59, she messages me and says, I'm downstairs. Not only did she show up, she showed up when she said she was going to, right? And she happened to be an old customer of mine in that little thrift store that put the roof over my head. Because I had fixed the machine up the way it was, she came in and she just went bang, 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 played with it for 15 minutes, and she paid me for it. And she goes, oh, you know what? I know you, and I feel really bad because I never buy off Facebook without haggling. And I said, oh my goodness. And I really needed that $140. $140. That was a good one for a sewing machine I didn't even know how to use. Well, up until yesterday, because I had to set it up to make sure it worked, right? And I followed the instructions in the manual, and I fixed that sewing machine. I knew it worked, right? She came in, sat in the chair, played with it for a few minutes. She goes, I usually haggle, but I know you. I feel bad. That's all. Give me $120. She goes, oh, how about 135? I said, okay. It's going towards my trip. I appreciate that, I said, right? And she gave me $135 for a sewing machine that I paid. I didn't pay much for it at all. I made a good profit on it. So I'm really pleased with that. At that moment, I am so excited because I don't even have groceries in the fridge. So I run off to the grocery store. I pick up a flat eggs. When I say a flat eggs, one of those big ones, those 30 packs of eggs. I'll eat eggs every single day because every single penny left is going towards my trip. I have a vehicle. I have the gas money. My camp spots are paid. Every time I go to the grocery store, I buy something for groceries for my bin. I have spending money now, coffee money, and I could buy some crystals when I go crystal digging because I go crystal digging every single year. I was top of the moon, right? Top of the moon. But it was in those lessons, that I have to stay positive, that I do have to move away from the negative, that I did a good thing when I quit my job, even though on the surface it looks irresponsible. Everything's okay. Everything is more than okay. Not only that, I've been able to do double time in my lessons. I have gotten so much insights that I actually feel that I'm not just doing myself a service, that I'm able to do others a service. That actually, that I'm not just serving the positive. I'm not just serving, right, the light and the darkness, right? I am serving the dark in touching the lightness for the very first time because I believe this is where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be meeting in in the middle. We're supposed to be interacting with each other. We are the next stage of evolution. Those that think they're high and righteous, that be all to end all, right? The goodies, they're not going to move forward because nobody is a goody goody, right? Nobody is. And you can act that way and you could actually feel that way, but it's a lie, right? It's a lie. And that frustration and those emotions that you have in knowing that it's a lie, you might not be showing that to anybody, right? You might be deep in the lessons. You got that lesson, but you're not feeling that lesson, right? And there's no movement in that because that negativity is not allowing, right, the good parts of you to surface. And if you're in the dark, right, and you're just off spending money, doing vacations, being irresponsible, taking pieces off of people, but you got that frustration and jealousy and stuff, right? That good that's supposed to be coming into your life, right? You have to build up the lessons in that, right? Because some of that negativity could be something that you don't have control over, right? You don't have control over your illnesses, right? My sister had no control. She needed that bypass. And can you imagine how scary that was? But in the lessons, we knew she was afraid. She voiced that she was afraid, but she didn't lay that on anybody because she knew she didn't have a choice, right? You don't cry over spilt milk. If you can't do anything about it, you can't do anything about it. You move forward the very best that you can, right? And this is the amazing thing about mindset, right? It's got nothing to do with religion. It doesn't have anything to do with the spirituality. Maybe a little bit, but I haven't gotten to that lesson yet. I am concentrating on being the best human being I possibly can. And in being the best human being I possibly can, I have to recognize that I'm partnering with myself. And if I want to partner with others, I need values, I need boundaries, and I need to be with people who also have values. And they also have the right to have boundaries, right? We can't go at each other because we can't be near each other because it's important for those other parts of us to surface. And I'm so grateful, right? That those other parts of me, I get it, right? It's something pretty special in that, right? And I understand that, not a lot of people get that special, right? I see it out there. I see the miserableness. I see the lack of people absorbing the lessons or even understanding that there's an opportunity to make life better for themselves, right? Even those other parts of you that are in the dark, right? Because you're so in the dark, they don't even recognize that there's any light. And in that partnership with yourself, that's your responsibility, right? That's what evolution is all about. That other those other parts of you have just not evolved to understand that there's a possibility in happiness, in joy, in abundance, in making the best human being you possibly can, right? Because they don't even want to be human because you're just miserable and depressed and full of resentment and jealousy and fear and grief, right? And that's why people, right, they work towards the other stuff. But it's not because they don't struggle. It's not because I don't struggle. It's just because I've got the lessons on the belt that help me to be adaptive. It helps me to be that word indifferent. It helps me to understand when I see the negative, when I see the backlash, when I feel the bite, that I have to move away from that and not bite back, right? And I'm not one for turning the other cheek. I believe in the lessons. That's only believing in the lessons because somebody in the dark doesn't recognize what they're doing to themselves in biting someone, in being jealous and being resentful and being bitter and being in the grief, right? And how can we go near that when the number one lesson is, right? Got to get away from that. You can't be around that, right? But how can you give energy? How can give energy if you can't be near that other energy? And that's what we're supposed to be moving towards. And we're not going to do it in the next week, of the next year. I'm not even going to do that. Next lifetime, possibly, or lifetimes down the road. We're all in different stages of evolution, and it doesn't help when we are born into these dynamic families, right? We live in an age where every family has become dynamic, and we're expected to be able to maneuver in that. And with the opportunity of bringing mindset into our lives as a tool for everybody, right? For everybody. It's not to say that I might not be religious one day or I might not be spiritual one day, even though in my experiences, right, sometimes it is hard to digest in the reality of the experience that I'm in. But when I see that it works, when I understand and all those tools that I have at my disposal now, when I can use those and manifest the things that make me feel accomplished, that make me feel joy, that make me feel happy, that send me off on holidays, right? I'm making a holiday that if I hadn't moved towards that, if I hadn't stayed in the state of mind and the state of emotions that I was, riding the waves, adapting and conquering, not crying over spilt milk, not being resentful and jealous and scared. I was worried, right? I was worried in that, but that's the growth. And I think worrying is a good thing because when you worry, you look for solutions. Okay, you guys. I'm not going to pull a card tonight. I think I'm going to leave it right there. It was a very good day. It'll be even a better day if I come into my live and I watch my live straight through and I don't have any issues in the sound and in the footage. I would be so happy. And that's what it's all about. But if nothing else, I'm happy I got that cord out of my laptop that was stuck in there. And I thought if I tugged too hard, all the guts of my laptop were going to come out too. And it didn't happen, right? That I was able to come into the settings and be able to get back on track with my internet without doing the Wi-Fi because I know, right? The cord helps. It's much better than going Wi-Fi, right? And then also be able to sell that sewing machine. And that just made it, oh, but also I have to say in all of that, in the crash of my magnificence of the day, accomplishing all that, cleaning the house, right? Working towards the trip, selling my sewing machine and fixing the laptop. I was exhausted, right? And I ate, right? It's one of my coping mechanisms. But I find ways to release, and that's something. I eat when I'm stressed, and I eat when I release, when there's that right? And that's the okay, everything's better now, Cindy. Here, have this. And I made raisin scones because I don't have any carbs in my house except for potatoes and biscuit. But I made raisin scones and they were delicious, right? And I picked up some naan bread and I made my little focaccia with the banana peppers and the feta cheese, and that was really good. And I had nice cups of coffee and nice cups of tea and amazing lessons come across my path. And I had the foresight to write those notes down, right? Just that one thought, that one little idea. What did I write here? My soul has work to do, but I'm keeping it busy in entertaining me in my frustrations and in my worries, right? And it's not getting an opportunity to resolve in my understandings, right? That I'm not paying attention to my lessons, right? And I'm not making any movement because it's just trying to, right, stay away from me when I'm in that mood. And that's the truth. We got to find ways to bring joy to our life and find out necessarily, like very necessarily, what brings us that joy, what makes us happy, what can we do in the moment that will make us feel good. I'm going to have a bubble bath. I'm going to put on my favorite fluffy pajamas because it's super cold outside today. It cooled right off. And tomorrow's going to be a dark, dreary, rainy day. And we haven't had a day yet this year that it's rained all day. It's been kind of spurty during the course of the day every once in a while, but it's supposed to rain all day tomorrow. I'm not sure how much I trust the Weather Channel, right? But if it does stay rainy and dreary tomorrow, that would make for a really nice day to stay in my pajamas. We'll see how that goes. Everybody, that's my good cheer, and we'll see you